That chapter was insane. One Piece chapter 980 is out, and as a Luffy and Zoro fan, this is something I have waited years for. Captain and Vice Captain greatness. The best duo in One Piece in action together. I expect a lot of controversy and toxicity from a power scaling standpoint over the next couple of weeks, but I won't be delving too deep into that in this review, and if that is what you're here for, expect a few videos pertaining to that over the next few weeks, so subscribe to me if you haven't already. Before I begin my review, I'd like to quickly say, check the description where you'll find links to my Discord, my previous One Piece chapter reviews, and my Twitter. Also do want to say I am in fact reviewing the scan release of the chapter as always, so if there's any changes in translation when the official comes out on Sunday, I will make sure to address that some way, maybe in a comment on this video, maybe in a future video or a future stream. Without further ado though guys, let's get into the chapter review. So the chapter picks up right where it left off last week, with some of the Beast Pirates playing and wasting food, literally completely surrounded by food and even trying to have a food fight. Last chapter ended with Luffy staring down these Beast Pirates, and this chapter kicked off with him squashing one of them. Just like last chapter, Luffy is thinking about how valuable the Oshiruko was to Tama, and this fuels his anger to a point where he cannot console himself, and he immediately attacks one of the Beast Pirates with an elephant gun. I was personally hoping that Luffy would have control over his emotions and stick to the sneak attack. However, this isn't actually an issue because it was within Law's plan from the very beginning to have Luffy and Zoro, the two idiots, rampage and go crazy through the center and serve as a diversion while the rest of the alliance attacks from the right and left flanks as well as from the rear. So although I would have liked Luffy to ignore these guys for the purpose of character growth and progression, it is perfectly within his character to beat the shit out of them, and I'm not annoyed about this situation because it doesn't jeopardize the sneak attack. In fact, it kinda helps the sneak attack since this is exactly what Law was going for to begin with. Kid is in the vicinity and obviously reacting to Luffy, calling him an idiot and talking about how Luffy's idiocy will actually aid him in his route to the banquet. Kid calling Luffy an idiot for making a commotion is the main reason why I believe the two idiots Law was referring to in chapter 977 are not Luffy and Kid, but Luffy and Zoro. This is contrary to popular belief since everybody seemed to think Law was referring to Luffy and Kid. However, Kid doesn't strike me as an idiot. Law isn't going to refer to Kid as an idiot. He doesn't know him well enough and he doesn't know whether he is as brash as Luffy, whilst Zoro on the other hand makes perfect sense since Law has a history with Zoro and he knows exactly how he is. In literally the next page, Zoro flamboyantly makes his entrance by cutting a tower in half, which just goes to show that he is very similar to his captain in this regard, and further confirms that this was Law's plan from the very beginning. For the first time ever, Law's plans are actually running pretty smoothly. Zoro makes his epic ass entrance, which had me over the moon because if you go back and watch my review for chapter 979, I was practically certain that Zoro was going to get lost and have his own individual plotline, which could have been exciting, but I still would have much preferred to have some Luffy and Zoro action together as they are my two favourite characters in One Piece and we haven't seen some captain to vice captain action in quite some time. So I actually love the fact that this happened. Zoro's entrance makes perfect sense because even though he was being brash, it makes a lot of sense considering he heard a brawl going down and was running to his captain's aid. Zoro definitely could have been a little bit smarter with the entire situation, but it still makes a lot of sense for him to run in a panic to aid his captain with whatever's going on, especially when you read the rest of this chapter and see how their dynamic as a captain and vice captain is highlighted. And I know Zoro isn't the official vice captain, but that's what I'm going to call him because if it wasn't the 979 chapters other than this one, this chapter should have confirmed to you guys that these guys have a captain and vice captain relationship. Moving on, and that 5th page of the chapter was glorious. It was simultaneously epic and fucking hilarious. Zoro standing there like an absolute Chad, telling Luffy off for causing a commotion whilst causing a commotion like the dunce that he is just pure One Piece vibes through and through. It's like when Zoro gets lost and he blames other people for getting lost. Kid and Killer's gag faces of shock, looking at Zoro who's being an absolute simpleton in this situation, and calling him the worst when they're literally the worst generation is just prime One Piece material that was extremely satisfying to read. When this finally drops in the anime sometime like at the end of next year or whenever it is, it's gonna be amazing. Moving on though, and Luffy explains to Zoro why he was acting so brash and causing this commotion, basically trying to justify his idiocy to Zoro by telling him that these guys were wasting food, specifically Oshiruko. And without mention of Tama, Zoro immediately thinks of her and gets pissed. saying that it looks like he's gonna have to cut the people wasting food into pieces. And this is an addition I love because people tend to forget that in Act 1, in chapter 913, Luffy wasn't the only person who gained a motivation in taking down Kaido and Orochi and saving Wano. Zoro gained that motivation too. He gained that love for Tama too, which is something that satisfies me quite a bit considering we're about to go into a war, and for some reason the fandom thought that Luffy was the only Straw Hat who had reasons to fight. Well, that just isn't the case at all. They all want to save Wano, not just Luffy, and not just Zoro either. All of the Straw Hats and the majority of the Alliance outside of probably Kid want to save Wano. Moving forward, and the heat begins to rise as Apu, who was DJing, finds out that Luffy and Zoro are running rampant and causing a commotion. They obviously thought that Luffy was in Udon, so we can see Apu sweating, but obviously he isn't afraid, he's just shocked at the news of Luffy's presence. The next panel was probably one of my favourites in the entire chapter. It's just a tiny little panel of Luffy and Zoro running side by side in their disguises, and Luffy just has this massive grin on his face as per usual. They're not running because they don't think they can take the opposition, but rather that they don't care about these guys. They're after Kaido, not his subordinates, which is something a lot of you guys need to understand. I've seen so many guys on Twitter saying Luffy and Zoro are running from Apu, which indicates some sort of fear for Apu, which is just factually incorrect and is something only somebody who ignores context would say. Anyways, the interaction between Apu and Queen that we get after this was just fantastic. Their dynamic is something I find super cool considering Queen is this guy that's just all about the funk and Apu is quite similar in that regard. They had a conversation and Apu is just rapping the entire way through. This scene when it's animated is going to be funky, is going to be fun, is going to be enjoyable, and honestly at this stage Toei has been doing so well that for the first time in years of being a One Piece fan, I am super excited to watch this stuff in the anime when usually I wouldn't care much for the anime. Toei has been doing a fantastic job so far with the production when it comes to anime, but moving on. Queen's reaction to the news of everyone busting out of Udon felt really natural. He just has a little flashback to his conversation with Babanuki, who was the warden in the prison, who lied to Queen about the entire situation in Udon, obviously under the influence of Tama. Still, Queen doesn't care that much and is actually kinda thrilled throughout this chapter. He's excited that this is happening. Luffy and Zoro are bouncing around up to no good, beating up everybody in their way, and this is exciting Queen. Kid notices Apu is around and mentions his name, which is obvious build up to their imminent confrontation, which I'm going to talk about later on. This next page though, it gives us a very interesting revelation. Queen basically says that he is personally going to be wiping out one of the Flying Six, meaning there's going to be a position amongst them up for grabs, and this serves as a morale boost for all the beast pirates in the vicinity, including gifters and headliners, and this is giving them motivation to want to go after Luffy. These guys may be fodder, but some of these guys have some dope designs, which is funny considering they're fodder. But it's funny because Oda is very capable of making these cool and easy likable designs, so I don't understand why people are always talking about how One Piece has trash character designs. I don't think that makes any sense. But anyways, the next page gives us one of the funniest highlights of the chapter, where we have one of the fodder beast pirates accepting the fact that they are fodder, which is quite a rarity in One Piece. He basically says, well, we non-gifters don't stand a chance, so let's just drink. And this is dope because it's logical, it makes sense, and I have respect for weaklings who can admit they are weaklings. This is something fun to see, it makes sense. Luffy is charging in, running at you guys, taking on 50 of you at once. Of course a non-gifter is not gonna want to fight this guy. Moving on though, and it's time for the main portion of the chapter. It's time for the meat, the action, like a lot of action. I'm not going to be going in too deep at all with analysing this stuff from a power scaling standpoint. Those videos will be coming out throughout the week. What I will say though is I hope the dudes that were sleeping on Apu have finally stopped sleeping on Apu. I've seen people put him right at the bottom of their supernova lists just because they don't like his design. This guy's devil fruit is insane. We have no idea how it works, but what it managed to do to Kizaru was just insane. And obviously he never inflicted damage upon Kizaru, but firstly that's a Logia fruit user, and secondly that's an admiral of the navy. Nobody expects him to be able to hurt somebody so out of his league. Luffy though, although I do think he's much stronger than Apu, does make sense. It's not like the gap between them is that astronomical. Apu tags Luffy in the face, he hits him right in the cheek from quite the distance. Absolutely no idea how his devil fruit works, but I'm guessing if you're in range, he can hit you with sound waves, but we'll have to see how this is explained. He then then proceeds to land a slice on Zoro, cutting him on his chest, and it's quite clear from Luffy and Zoro's reactions to the damage inflicted upon them that they do not know what the hell is going on. Fighting Apu is like fighting Law for the first time. If you don't understand his abilities, you're gonna be in a sticky situation. Apu's next attack sets off an explosion on Luffy and he is knocked out by this attack, as crazy as it fucking sounds, but he's only knocked out for a couple of pages, so this isn't anything insane. The fact that Apu could make Luffy lose consciousness is kinda wild, but it's kinda negated by the fact Luffy gets up just a few moments later. Queen is laughing at these guys from the sidelines as Luffy gets nuked and Zoro gets sliced, and then we get my favourite page of this chapter. Zoro, the GOAT, the future world's strongest swordsman, the vice captain to the future pirate king, is carrying Luffy, his unconscious captain, and trying to escape. He's carrying Luffy to safety, y'all. Do you know when the last time we had a Luffy and Zoro moment was? A moment on this level of greatness? In my opinion, the last time we had a Luffy and Zoro moment that was even close to as cool as this was in Punk Hazard, when Zoro tells Luffy to start taking shit seriously. And I watched that in the anime, so that was like 8 years ago for me. This is 8 years of me waiting. I've been watching weekly since 2009 and I'm a huge fan of Luffy and Zoro, so for me this is just beautiful. More than I could ever have asked for. This moment, amazing. I've seen so much slander of Luffy and Zoro all over the place, but it's kind of wild because people seriously need to understand that this is merely Oda's way of building hype for Apu and setting up the next few chapters. I am sure you guys know how this chapter ends. It ends with Kid attacking Apu, so Kid vs Apu should be coming soon in the next few chapters. Oda needed to hype up Apu and make him look kinda good before this fight kicks off, because right now we have nothing to go off of for him, so we're not going to be able to gauge how strong he is going into this fight. And I like the fact that Oda done this. He is showing respect to Apu as a character and just the supernova as a whole. Back to the page though, my favourite page of the chapter, and as well as the fact that an injured Zoro is carrying Luffy to safety, I love the dialogue on this page. Zoro addresses the seriousness of the situation and why taking damage right now is something he and Luffy cannot afford. They cannot afford to take damage because they have to fight Kaido, and if they go into that fight injured, they're not going to stand a chance. Seeing this side of Zoro, his vice captain instincts flourishing as he addresses things that need to be addressed, is just wonderful. I've had this awkward impression over the last few chapters that the Straw Hats are a little too lighthearted and there's no feeling of stakes, which is kinda wild considering a war's about to kick off, but this inner dialogue from Zoro was enough to dispel that impression. Zoro continues to run and dodge attacks from the pirates hunting him down, and Luffy finally wakes up and he's fine, nothing wrong with him here. Apu's attacks did not do any long-lasting damage whatsoever to him. In fact, Luffy bites a wolf smile user's head here. he's totally fine. I'm gonna reiterate and say this again. Luffy and Zoro are perfectly fine. At most they look a little ragged and their clothes are a little messed up. Oda is merely hyping up Apu in order to set up this Kid fight, and it clearly worked because everybody is blowing this chapter out of proportion. Don't get me wrong guys, there is absolutely no doubt that Apu is formidable, but this chapter is definitely not enough to say he is stronger than either Luffy or Zoro. I want you to think back to Punk Hazard, specifically Luffy versus Monet. Monet technically is the winner of this fight, but is she stronger than him? Hell no. In fact, she says herself that wins and losses are not purely determined by strength, and this kind of logic has to be applied to this situation. Apu snuck up on Luffy and Zoro and hit them with attacks they couldn't understand, let alone see coming, but this doesn't mean he's stronger than either of them. All it means is that he caught them off guard and he had a great showing against them. I'd expect any of the Supernova to be able to replicate what Apu did to Luffy and Zoro if they could do long range sneak attacks like Apu. Moving on though, and Luffy and Zoro are already out of their disguises and back to their normal outfits. The boy Luffy has his long coat on and he just looks fantastic. I'm never going to get used to this captain coat. It just looks so fucking badass. I love Luffy in this coat. I don't want him to ever take this coat off. There's a little dialogue between Luffy and Zoro here on this panel, and I've noticed it's been seriously misinterpreted by a lot of people all over Twitter, all over Discord, and even in some chapter reviews I've seen, so I'm going to quickly clear this up. Luffy says that they have to force their way through the pirates, and it's seemingly tough because the pirates know that they are the enemies now that their disguises are gone and there's a shit ton of numbers surrounding them. Zoro replies by saying, yeah, I'm having trouble moving too. For some reason, people seem to think Zoro is struggling to move because of the damage inflicted upon him by Apu, which is just nonsensical. Zoro was able to move finally and carry Luffy to safety immediately after being attacked. And if you read properly, you'll notice that Zoro is replying to Luffy. He said, "I'm struggling to move too," which means they're both struggling to move for the same reason. Not because of the damage inflicted by Apu, but rather because they were exposed and they're outnumbered. Hopefully my interpretation can clear some things up. If you have any contrasting thoughts, feel free to comment them down below, but I'm sure the official translation on Sunday will help to clear things up. Finally though, we reach the end of the chapter and we have a glorious double-page spread to end things off on. Apu's just about to hit Luffy and Zoro with yet another attack, and this could have been the strongest attack yet, considering he says, "Are you ready for the base drop?" Which to me just implies this is going to be a bigger attack than the last few, but before he can actually attack them, he is snuck from behind and completely squashed by a massive metal arm belonging to Kid. People need to respect Apu, bro, because if he actually hit them here, I could see him dealing some serious damage to Luffy and Zoro. He is attacking them and they're running away, so it's to be expected. This guy is powerful. Stop sleeping on Apu. Kid though, he indirectly saves these guys, snuck up on him on smoke. He shouts that everything is Apu's fault, calls him a backstabber, and hits him with a Punk fucking Gibson. Yet another named attack from Kid. We have Repel, Punk Rotten, and now Punk Gibson. The greatness is here, folks. The supernova we have waited to see shine for hundreds of chapters are finally getting their spotlight. And for some reason, people think this has killed Apu or defeated Apu, this one attack, and that just makes no sense. That is absolutely impossible. I'm calling it now. Apu might be hurt, but he's not out cold, guys. If you're a subscriber, you've probably already seen my Apu vs Kid video, but if you haven't, I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to see and hear my extensive thoughts on the matter. Regardless, I'm going to be making an updated video sometime this week. This fight has been telegraphed for hundreds of chapters, guys. Hundreds of chapters. Oda didn't go through all the effort of making Apu look this good in this chapter just for Kid to defeat him with a single metal fist. Apu took a light kick from a Navy Admiral and somewhat tanked it. I have faith in my boy to get up from this and give Kid that work. Plus, we do not understand how Apu's abilities work. That needs to be explained before this guy is taken out, so I expect to see a fight between them. I'm going for high diff, that's my estimation. This fight has just got so much going for it and just so much potential. But I'm going to make a separate video for that because this deserves its own discussion video. That is it for the review though, guys. My short expectations for next chapter is that we're going to get some scenes of the other members of the Alliance, like Jinbei, Law, maybe Denjiro, maybe Kinemon, whoever. We're going to get somebody else, somebody that isn't Luffy, Law or Kid, and we're going to get some updated info on whatever's going on with their situation, whilst maybe getting some pages of the Kid and Apu conflict. Thank you guys for watching though. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment your thoughts down below, and join the Discord if you haven't already. I've been Fiji, until next time.